I thought it was really interesting that chat that you had with that young philosophical student, or
Yeah, he's very
or
bright. Very bright
yeah,
guy.
that was a really good discussion between you guys, and I started chatting with some friends after it as well about that, and I agreed with both of you as far as how you say that
He
the
was.
morals of the Torah, like
Mhm.
is that just enough to get it across the line? And then you were talking about Aristotle saying, okay, he too has good morals. That why what sells Judaism, like apart from good morals, like Aristotle's thesis is just as good as Torah, if we want to say that. But what sells Torah? And I kind of agree with him to
Mhm.
say that we need a selling point of Torah, and that is God. That is the existence of God. It's not just good morals.
So I think his perspective, or the perspective of most philosophers, is that Aristotle's philosophy is a good basis to come up with other ethical laws that could supersede the Torah, but that could only be embraced on an individual level. See, the Torah is not given to the individual, the Torah is given to the nation. I can't convince you to behave in a proper manner just because I wrote a book on my philosophies. It's a bestseller like Plato's Republic or some ancient philosophical work. You're not going to want to behave in a certain manner unless you feel those instructions are objective and not just subjective. Being that it's been Torah, the five books of Moses, that has civilized this world. I'm not married to Judaism. I'll convert to any other religion that makes me a better person. Duplicate the efforts Judaism has gained, has brought to this world, and then I'll consider joining that belief
But
system.
but could we say that Plato and Aristotle, they also too established Western civilization?
But the Torah predated Plato and Aristotle. Philosophical thought is in many times limiting. When this guy was giving over his argument, there's a lot of philosophical rules that he embraced and he didn't even know he embraced them. In other words, like by him saying that this has to mean this or then it just doesn't make sense. That sounds like you're putting yourself in a box anyways, because some philosopher could come around next year and explain another quandary that goes even deeper. To think that we have all the tools, the philosophical tools, to define what God is and what he is not and what is the limiting of God based off of Plato and Aristotle that existed around the time of the Maccabees, it's a little short-sighted.
Yeah,
This is why.
I think the argument that was made as well, whether it was you or the other guy, about how can you show people Torah and say, look at history, it really works. But then on the other hand, there's a guy called Abraham, and he tried to kill his son.
Right.
Do I really want to attach myself to that? Which makes it hard. Then what is the selling point of the Torah? Okay, sure, it's got history on its side, and
Ethics.
a lot of yeah, sure,
Consistent ethics.
but how do we then sell that to a nation, or how do we sell that to people or Jews who are born into it? How do we sell it to them and say this is a good system to live under when you've got the worldly system which works just as well now? Like I think there's got to be a sticking point. There's got to be something more to it than just ethics, because it's not selling. That's my opinion anyway. Yeah.
Okay. So the worldly system of today is based off biblical values outside of the former Soviet Union, North Korea, Cambodia, Cuba, any atheistical society. All those societies, history tells us, leaves a trail of blood, carnage, death, starvation. Now we see Western Europe nowadays doesn't claim to be religious, but are really standing on the shoulders of giants, right? They're walking down a path paved by their religious relatives. Norway, Sweden, 100 years ago, they were religious. They're dealing with what's called cut flower ethics. They're walking around thinking they have some ethical base because of their religious past, but eventually this modern day philosophy will catch up with them. And what we saw in the Soviet Union, we're going to see with them as well. And we
It will
see,
crumble.
right, well, we see that already happening. They're not even reproducing. They have to import foreign workers with foreign ideas.
So then how do you then convince someone in the space of a lifetime, 70 to 120 years or less? How do you convince someone that this is the way to live? Like,
History.
there's not much. Yeah,
History
I
is the
know.
best proof. The question is, how do you convince someone who doesn't know history? For example, how did God convince the Israelites? It would have been easier because it would have been so groundbreaking what they were hearing. A system that consistently works. I mean, only because the Code of Hammurabi or the Book of the Dead has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laws that appear in the Torah. But that doesn't mean whether we could duplicate the Torah's efforts through the Book of the Dead. It just hasn't happened. So I think what makes the Torah different is not that it's just good, that it's consistently good. And I don't even claim that it's perfect because I can't explain it all. There's some portions that I wish were worded differently. But overall, we owe tribute to it because it's the book that has civilized humanity. No other system. That's why I told the guy, I'm not married to Judaism. Bring me another system, a better system, and I'll consider it. But no system has arisen. Now, theories have arisen saying, well, maybe Aristotle's philosophy, Plato's philosophy. There's no society nowadays based off of Greek thought. Bring me the system and we'll consider it. But till then, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and try to ethically reinvent the wheel, which is what a lot of seculars try to do. It's easier to destroy than to build. So once they destroy everything and they realize, oh, I was wrong, do you really think they're going to go back to the Torah? No, they're going to continue because their issue is not that the Torah doesn't make sense. They have a war against God, perhaps of the religion they were raised in or with the way God was presented to them. It's not a rational pursuit. In other words, where they're not rationally warring against the Torah because reason tells you it worked.
That's why I say that there's got to be another selling point to it. It just can't be an ethical system that we sell to them because not everything in the Torah is ethical according to today's standards. So, right. And that's why I think, I agree with both of you. There has to be another selling point to it.
Mm-hmm. Tribute in the sense that by acknowledging that our ethics started in Torah and that's our ethical base, and then we in some way try to build on that, that's equally honorable and maintaining the Torah's integrity. But humanists could claim to be ethical now that without even acknowledging where those ethics came from. But if a humanist understands and appreciates the contribution that Torah has, even in his own philosophy, even though he doesn't claim to be religious, I think that's ultimately what God wants out of you. Just like he commanded you to honor your parents, honor him because he gave us that thrust forward. But this is why the hatred against the Bible is completely irrational. They completely want to uproot it and say that from the outset, it could have been duplicated if you put enough monkeys in a room. Right? So that's what we're dealing with what Halakha calls a mumar lehachis, a heretic who's angry with God. It's not a rational pursuit.